Hey everybody, it's Denise and I'm here at Nuddles in Murray, and I want to get started with you guys with a little countdown to Christmas. So Christmas is coming soon and I love to do sewing projects for people that I give gifts for Christmas. So I wanted to share, and the rest of us at Nuddles want to share some of our favorite gift ideas for the holidays that we do for sewing. So today what we're going to start with is classic, one of my favorites to do, really special gift, homemade, but so great for anybody. It's going to be a Minkee blanket. So I'm going to use the Shannon Cuddle fabrics. I've got my two colors picked out here. This one is like a brand new print that we've got, and then the pink is got a little sparkle in it, so I thought that would be really fun. I'm not sure who I'm going to give this one to for Christmas, so you guess you could just start being really nice and maybe you'll make it on my list, who knows. So just a couple of tips before I get started. 100% want you to use a walking foot anytime you sew these big pieces of the Cuddle fabrics together. They're thicker, some of them have a little bit of stretch, but the way the material is, it shifts a lot, so a walking foot's going to solve that problem 100%. And then pins, of course, for sure we're going to use some pins, but before I get to that point, when I cut the fabric it can be a little bit messy, so one way to avoid that frustration is with one of these babies. This is just a handheld vacuum. It's a dirt devil, so that's going to solve a lot of the problems with all the mess. One of the other things that I do if I'm cutting a lot of pieces is after I cut it, I'll just throw it in the dryer for a minute. I'm not washing it, I'm not wetting it, but I'll just throw it in the dryer for a minute and it kind of beats off all the little bits from the edges. So that really helps me eliminate the mess, because I know that's a big frustration that people have. So the first thing that I'm going to do to get started with the blanket is tell you how much fabric I have here and start pinning. So I have two equal pieces. They're 2 yards a piece. This is going to give me about a 60 by 72 inch finished blanket, which is an awesome size for a throw, a cuddle blanket. And so 2 yards of each piece. If you've got somebody that you're making this for that's super tall, you might use 2¼ or 2½ yards. We also have 90-inch wide Minkee, and we just got in a new size of 80-inch wide Minkee. So if you wanted it to be a lot bigger, then you could do one of those larger sizes. So I have both of my pieces right sides together on a nice big flat surface. This is a lovely table to be able to do this on. It's really easier to do this process when it's all kind of laid out together, because sometimes the pieces aren't quite the exact same size. So if you don't have, large tables like this to use, maybe try to use a nice floor space where you can spread it all out, get the two pieces even together, and then start pinning. So I've got my two layers. I'm putting them right sides together. The cool thing about sewing with the Minkee is the Minkee is so forgiving. If you're off a little bit, see how they're not perfectly exactly lined up? I'm totally not going to go back and trim that. I'll just use the darker fabric as my edge that I'm going to use for my seam allowance. So I'm putting my pin. You can certainly pin closer than this. I don't feel the need to do that because I'm going to use the walking foot. I know people pin like every couple of inches, and the walking foot that I'm going to use is awesome, and it's going to keep these layers even for me. So now I'm going to that the selvage edge here. I'm not trimming off the selvage. I'm just going to leave that on. It's just simplifies the process and makes it less messy. So I'm going to continue going all the way around the whole blanket, and you don't need to watch me do that. So I'll check back with you in a minute. Okay, so I pinned all the way around. I don't know, I'm about 6, 8, 10 inches apart. You'll get the feel for how many pins you need, what you're comfortable with. So before I get started with the sewing, I'm just going to check and see if one of my fabrics is either a little bit bigger or has a little bit more stretch to it. When I feel the two of these, I feel like the pink fabric has just a little bit more stretch than the black. So what I'm going to do is put that fabric on the bottom. It'll feed a little bit nicer, and it'll make for, I think, a little more success in the end. So I'll keep the pink on the bottom, and I will use my walking foot like we talked about. I'm just going to use the edge of the walking foot as my guide. It's about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I wouldn't go any closer than that. If you feel like you need to go a little bit farther, go a little bit farther, maybe move the needle position over to the left a little bit. I also am going to increase the length of my stitch. The preset on the Berninas is about 2.5. I'm going to go up to about 3 because it's just going to feed the thickness of this fabric a little bit nicer for me and stretch out the stitches just a little bit farther. But it's going to hold really secure. So I will start my stitching. I'm not going to start on a very end in a corner. I'll start about midway down one side, because when I finish, I'm going to leave that opening, and I don't want the opening in the corner. I don't like that. So I'm going to start about midway down one side, and I'm going to, this is where my selvage edge is, and notice I didn't cut it off. So I'm just going to have the edge of the fabric on the edge of the walking foot, and change my foot. Sorry, I should have done this before. It wants me to tell it what foot I'm using. No need to backstitch at the beginning. I'm gonna stitch over this in a couple minutes, so I don't feel the need to backstitch. You are welcome to do that if you want. I am all about maximum speed, especially when I stitch with the Minkee. So please, 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 please take your pins out before you get to them, and then we're just going to start cranking around this whole thing. If you find that you're getting some extra shift going on, you might turn the fabric over and start working from the other side, because that top fabric likes to push a little bit. The really, really, really great thing about Minkee, and I kind of mentioned this before, is that it's so forgiving. So if you have to like make a little teeny tiny pucker in your fabric or something, you're not even going to notice that. So I'm just going to crank around this whole thing, and I'll leave myself about 6 inches opening when I get all the way around to the other side. So let's meet back after I do that. So here I am at a corner, and I want to talk for a minute about how I handle the corners. If I was doing maybe a table runner or a smaller item, not with this thick fabric that was going to get a lot of moving around, I would probably just come to the corner, pivot, and turn. With the Cuddle blankets, for some reason, I like to come all the way off the edge. So I'm just going to come all the way to the edge, all the way off, and I don't know if you can see, but my pink fabric ran a little bit shorter up here, and that's totally normal. I wanted to make sure you guys could see. Those are not perfectly exactly the same, and you know what? I'm absolutely 100% fine with that. So I came all the way off the edge, and then I'm just going to start my new row all the way on the edge, and just have a little overlap, a little more security. You could backstitch there if you wanted to. Okay, so now you can see that they're, again, a little bit crooked. Don't cut this off. You don't need to do that. They're close enough. I'll start stitching using the pink as my guide. And again, I'm just going to use the edge of my walking foot right as my edge. And then I'm just going to sneak under here where I've got this pinned. And you can see that it's a little bit, it comes straight about right here. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball that. You guys can do this, and I wanted you to see that it's not perfection, but man, it's going to come out great in the end. Nobody's going to know that it was just off a little bit. So I'm going to use this kind of imaginary line right here as my guide. If you feel the need that you need to cut off this fabric here to make it perfectly straight, that's fine. But I'm just going to kind of aim for getting straight right about here. And you can certainly tuck back underneath and make sure you're following that line. And I'm back on track. Okay, so don't stress if your fabric shifts a little bit and it gets crooked. It's totally normal, and that's why I wanted to show you that there, because it's okay. You don't have to unpick anything. You don't have to start over. You don't have to cut it. You can do this, and it's still going to be absolutely perfect when you come around to the front. And that's what I think makes these blankets really awesome, because they're just perfect no matter what. So I am on my last edge. Let me hurry and finish stitching that, and then I will show you how I finish it off, because we're almost there. Okay, so I've gotten to the end of my stitching. I left myself about a 6-inch opening. And I told you earlier that I don't backstitch this. The reason I don't backstitch it is because sometimes I leave my opening not quite big enough, and it's really hard to open it up more if I backstitch. So I leave it open, and if I need to pull out a couple more threads to be able to pull all this through, I'll do that. So now is the fun part, because I get to see what it looks like on the front side. So we're just gonna kind of take a minute here to pull all this through, and then we're just gonna top stitch the whole thing closed. So time here to get this going, and yeah, isn't that fun? I love the color combination. I got a little sparkle going on with the pink, and this awesome texture with that black kind of animal-ish print thing going on. We are also this whole month we always work with Shannon Fabrics to do some charity work. So any we track all the sales of the Cuddle fabric throughout the month of November up till Thanksgiving, and we donate based off of how much is sold, and so does Shannon Fabrics. We donate for food bank. We'll have some more details on that you can see. So that's pretty cool to know that everybody's gonna make out good this year. So okay, I am turned. I might sneak my hand in here and just kind of work those corners a little bit. It's not going to be super sharp corner. It's going to have a little bluntness to it because it's thick, and that's great. So there's my corners. I'll just get all the way around. So the final step is just to sew this whole thing closed. I've played around. I've made a lot of these. So I played around with different spacing for where I stitch this top stitch at the end. So I'm going to do, the last one I did, I went about, I don't know, about 2 inches in from the edge, and I'm just going to stitch all the way around. This isn't something that I need to go back and quilt. It's a blanket, so it's okay if it kind of shifts throughout the middle. It's always going to come back home to where we're at here. So I don't usually pin this step. However, I will kind of make a note of where that opening was. I've already lost where my opening was, and once I get to stitching I'll certainly find it, but I just want to make sure. And if you're going to go 2 inches in, you're probably not going to catch oh, there it is. You're probably not going to catch this at that 2-inch seam allowance. So you're either going to want to go back super close to the edge and just do a nice straight stitch super close to the edge, or even just like a little zigzag that comes off the edge. But I've just got it turned under, folded under. It's that same about 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to stick some pins in here right now. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually seal this closed so you can see that. The other thing that you could do is you could just do your top stitching a bit closer to the edge. So let me get this prepped and I'll show you how I stitch that. Okay, so before, when I did my stitching, I didn't talk about the thread that I used, but I used 100% polyester. It's nice and strong. It's not going to wear down or break over time. I don't worry too much about the color when I'm stitching from the inside, because you're not going to see that, but I am going to do top stitching now. You're really not going to see it that much because the nap of this material is so thick, but I did switch to black on the top. So I've got black on the top, white in the bobbin. You could match it closer, but you're not going to see it. So black in the bobbin probably wouldn't be a good idea on the pink. It would show up a little bit, but at least come closer. At least you can use a neutral color, but just come a little closer. So I'm going to stitch my opening closed. I'm going to come super close to the edge of the fabric this time. So I've got that 1/2 inch tucked underneath. I'm just going to use the inside of the toe here, and it's definitely hard to distinguish where the actual edge of the fabric is, but once I push it right up to the edge of that toe, it's kind of just going to smush right down. So my opening, it starts about here. I'm just going to, I can almost kind of push the fabric right up to the inside of that toe, and it makes a good little ledge. So I'm just going to stitch nice and close, straight stitch, and I'm going to go all the way through that, and when I get to the other end, it's going to be disguised right in there. And then I usually just come and, let's see, make sure I got it all. A little farther to go. I usually just come stitch right off the edge to make sure I got it all. And then I will snip that nice and close. And now is the fun part. I'm going to top stitch this whole thing. I'll go back and snip these little guys, these little tails later. But I got my edge, and you know, you can feel it now, but once I just kind of play with this a little bit and fluff it up, you won't even notice where I stitched there. Okay, so that's pretty great. So now I'm going to do one more row all the way around the whole thing, and I'll use about a 2-inch seam allowance. Actually, what I'll do is on the edge of my needle plate here, it's about, where are we at? Maybe 1 inch and a little bit, so, or 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to actually line the edge of my fabric right along the edge of here, or come pretty close to that. If you want to use the guide that comes with your walking foot and have it extend out a little bit farther, great. If you want it to be narrower, great. So I'll just use the edge of the needle plate as my guide. I'm going to use that same straight stitch. Just going to try to keep the edge flat. So I'm watching over here, and I'm kind of just keeping an eye on where the seam is on the edge of the fabric. It really just finds its way there and just folds right in half. So I'm just going to stitch all the way around using that guide on the edge. And then when I get to the corner here, I will stop and pivot in the corner and continue on. I'm not gonna come all the way to the edge. So I'll stop at that same distance in the corner, pivot, and work my way around. If you find when you're stitching that it's just not feeding enough, you might increase the length of your stitch a little bit. I caution you on pulling from the back. I know we like to pull from the back because we think that's going to help it along. I caution you on that because I don't want you to pull too much and bend your needle and break your needle and throw off things with your machine. So try not to pull from the back, but more feed from the front, and keep your fabric kind of weightless. If it's too heavy and weighed down in front of you, it's really going to have a hard time feeding. So just some tips to have success with this, because this is a really fun project, and man, I make a ton of these for gifts and for myself. I have a lot of these blankets at home. So I'm just watching this edge over here. I'll get to the corner and show you how I do that, and then we'll finish her off. So once I hit the point where coming down, I'm about the same distance from the edge, I'll leave my needle down, I'll raise the foot and come around. And just get back on track. That's it, you guys. So I'll show you the finished project when I'm done. And it's gonna be just a couple minutes. So this blanket, from start to finish, I can have done, I don't know, in an hour, but let's say maybe 2 to 3 hours realistically for your first time. And awesome gift ready to go. Okay, thanks for watching. Well, I'll be right back. Okay, you guys, the blanket's all done, and I think I got it finished in about just a little over an hour. So this was 2-yard pieces, and it's an awesome size to cuddle up in. So soft and warm and awesome. So let me just tell you a couple of more things. We have a huge selection of cuddle to choose from, so please stop into any one of our stores anytime and see what we've got. I will tell you that just a little warning. Once you make one of these, they're kind of addictive and they're a great gift, so might plan on making more than one. So I don't know when you're going to be watching this video, but it's the beginning of November here where I am right now at Nuddles. All of the cuddle is on sale, and the more you purchase, the greater your discount is. So that sale goes through November 20th. 2021. So if you're not before November 20th and you're viewing this, make sure you check our website for the details on our sales, because we run sales all the time. So I hope that you love making these cuddle blankets, and I have plenty, so you don't have to make one for me. Maybe I can give this to one of you guys, I don't know. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great holiday season.